Good afternoon, all. Just to say, I'm very happy to be here. We got invited to this, and we struggled to find someone to come because our head of our Oceans Governance Unit was not available to come. But after discussions, it was decided, since I was actually managing the crop, that I would come and present on behalf of the OECS. I've been working with the OECS for quite some time. Recently came back to the OECS after a 4-year stint with the government of St. Lucia. Prior to that, I was with the OECS for 6 years, managing projects under climate change and biodiversity and protected areas. So my background is actually in climate change, biodiversity, and oceans governance. As small island people, we have to have many hats. Okay. So just to give a little bit on the OECS experience, I guess you say works? Yes. Okay. I won't assume that everybody knows what the OECS is. It's the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States. It's an international intergovernmental organization, and our focus is on economic harmonization and integration within our member states, and also focuses on good governance in several different areas. We came into being on this June 18th, 1981. Some 30 years later, there was a revision to our treaty, the Treaty of Basseterre, and it established us as an economic union. So we're currently an economic union. We don't, may not compare to the EU that everybody's familiar with, but we are the OECS Economic Union. Oops, this is. Okay. We have 10 members. Yes, Jorge, not 9, 10 members. A few years ago, we had our last, well, the most recent member that came into our flock was about 2 years ago. We have 7 full members, which are the original founders of the OECS. There's Antigua and Barbuda. There's the Commonwealth of Dominica. There's Grenada, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and Montserrat. These are the 7 founding members. And we also have 3 associate member states. That's Anguilla, the British Virgin Islands, and Martinique, which is the newcomer. And we're hoping to continue to expand. Just to touch a bit on our policy framework, our legal framework, actually, the revised Treaty of Basseterre. It presents a number of areas that we coordinate and harmonize among our member states. And 2 of the areas I've pulled out are L and O under Article 4.2. And L speaks to education, and O speaks to matters relating to the sea and its resources. So you can see that our very foundation, which is our treaty, actually allows for that collaboration between education and matters relating to the sea. In terms of our programs are run, in terms of the education program, this is more or less guided by the education sector strategy. It's a strategy that extends from 2012 to 2021, and it notes that everyone is entitled to an education. Every single individual, every single citizen is entitled to an education. And it notices also that when it comes to being a facilitator, education is a facilitator of growth, economic growth, individual empowerment, and social cohesion. So without that, economic growth, without education, economic growth would not be optimal. In terms of the Caribbean blue economy, in 2012, a study showed that the economy was worth about $407 billion. This is a wider Caribbean, so it's larger than the OECS itself, which is just 10 islands in the Eastern Caribbean. This is 34 cities and territories and about 40 million people. The blue economy contributes to food security, facilitates trade, supports tourism, which is one of the mainstays of the region, and also oil and gas, among others, including fisheries. So it stands to reason, as small island states, that the ocean is actually ingrained in our DNA. We think the ocean, we breathe the ocean, we dream the ocean. And we've done so for time immemorial. And just to state that when we look at the small island developing states, our largest resource is our oceans. The figures here show that the ocean space is actually well over 100 times the land space of these countries. And just a little quote from our first Director General of the OECS in 1988 to show you how long we've been looking at the blue economy, even if it hadn't been coined the blue economy, just a statement that was made in 1988 in an article. For the OECS member states, the sea and resources assumed a new importance as possibly the last frontier for resource exploitation. So we recognized it then, and this is still valid today. So since then, more recently, the OECS has developed Eastern Caribbean regional ocean policy with assistance from the Commonwealth. This is based on good practice and is actually one of the first of its kind in our region. What I have here is the actual vision that was pulled out from this policy, and it states that we expect that the policy will deliver a healthy and richly biodiverse Caribbean marine environment, sustainably managed in an integrated way, to promote socioeconomic development and support the livelihoods and aspirations of current and, of course, our future generations. So this is what basically drives our oceans governance program. This is what guides our actions. And just to note, it was developed between 2010 to 2012. It was adopted by our authority, which is the heads of government of the 10 countries, in June 2013. Alongside the ECROP, that is the policy itself, is a strategic and action plan. Within that strategic action plan, it notes that the care of the environment is the responsibility of everyone. However, when we look at the lack of education, that contributes to persons not being able to accept accept problems associated with the, or take ownership of problems associated with the oceans, as well as participate in identifying and implementing solutions. So one of the main areas, or one of the priority areas for action, is actually to support and promote public education on oceans. So it specifically focuses on oceans and education in this particular action. Oh, I'm not speaking. Oh, sorry. Okay, I should try to speak louder. I thought I was doing a good job at that. Okay. The blue economy. In terms of the blue economy in its latest concept form, in 2015, the CARICOM, which is the Caribbean Community and Common Market, and there are about 23 member states within this community, and 9 of our 10, with the exception of Martinique, 9 of the 10 OECS countries actually fall under the CARICOM umbrella as well. So in 2015, at an inaugural meeting of the CARICOM ministers and the G20 Development Working Group, the issue of the blue economy was raised. This was discussed, and it was realized that was really not enough information to inform policymakers. The meeting actually ended, and no one really at that time could really identify and define what the blue economy really meant. So there was a recommendation coming out of this meeting to have an analysis of what the blue economy was for the region and how the countries could really transition towards the blue economy. And the response was met by the World Bank, who produced a document called Toward a Blue Economy, a Promise for Sustainable Growth in the Caribbean. And this today serves as a guide for policymakers to plan a successful transition to the blue economy. Within this document, the World Bank document, there are a number of policy instrument designs. It speaks to best practices for national ocean governance policies, but it also speaks to policy instruments of delivery or delivery of policy instruments. And some of these measures that can be taken. And education and awareness is one of the primary ones that it speaks to as a means to delivering your policy actions. Out of the recommendation from the World Bank document, the analysis of the blue economy in the Caribbean, and consistent with the good practices that have been outlined in this document, a project called the Caribbean Regional Oceanscape was developed. And it is designed to meet the needs of both what was outlined in that document, but also what is outlined in our ECROP, our Eastern Caribbean Regional Ocean Policy, which of course is in sync with the World Bank document. This particular project is JEF funded, as Jorge mentioned earlier. It's $6.3 million. It's been implemented by the World Bank. And the time frame is that it started in October of 2017 and is due to conclude in 2021, and has a project development objective to strengthen capacity for ocean governance and coastal and marine geospatial planning. There are 5 countries that are participating from this. This project is open, of course, to projects that are to countries that are eligible for JEF funding, and 6 of our countries are eligible. However, 5 of them have chosen to participate in this project. But just to also mention that under our ECROP, that is the policy itself, within that framework, there is what we call an ocean governance team, and this oceans governance team is responsible for overseeing the Oceans Governance Program and providing guidance to that, including the crop. The Oceans Governance team actually has a representative from each of our member states. So the 10 member states actually still provide guidance to this project, despite the fact that it's the beneficiaries, the direct beneficiaries, are the 5 member states. And the OECS, to note, is also working with other partners, such as the Commonwealth, to ensure that benefits under this project can also be received by our other member states. So specifically for this forum, under that particular project, we will be, well, maybe I should give a little background on it before. Apart from what's on the screen here, there are a number of deliverables that will be met by this project, including national oceans governance policies, which were mentioned in the ECROP, in the policy document itself, the strategic action plan as an action to be undertaken, which was also recommended by the World Bank document that I mentioned earlier. But we're also going to be doing coastal master plans and marine spatial plans. Marine spatial plans both at the national level and at the regional level. So these are some of the deliverables that the crop will be providing. But more specifically to education, the project is also looking to support the virtual Educa efforts by producing a number of educational tools that will be relevant to the OECS countries and populating the Think Blue platform. And some of these are outlined on the screen here. For one, we have an original content product on the blue economy, and that is targeted at decision makers. And recall that I mentioned that when the ministers of finance met, there was this lack of understanding of what the blue economy meant. So this will contribute to answering some of their questions and educating them on what the blue economy could mean for their countries. Okay. There's also 5 e-books. These e-books are targeted more at middle-level managers, and so we'll have some technical content to them. And again, just to provide information that is very specific to the OECS for decision-making is the idea behind these e-books. There will be a number of webinars as well that will be developed for a number of different groups, for example, policymakers, middle-level managers, the youth, citizens at large, and more. And also a Blue Economy EduTech Learning course. The details of all of these, it's a little hard to say at this point in time as we seek consultancy services to develop these, and these will be developed in consultation with stakeholders. So it's a little, I'd be preempting the entire process if I was to go into any more detail on each product. So the Blue Economy EduTech Learning course, of course, and one EduTech primary school game. Primary school for us is from grade 3 to about grade 6. So these are the products that would be developed under the project and would help populate Think Blue. And just to conclude, I mean, by no means does the OECS look at the blue economy as a means to solve all our woes, but it is definitely the way to go in order to start to reduce poverty and try to sustain economic growth. Just to sum up, our policy structure, including our e-crop and our education strategy, and of course, definitely our revised Treaty of Bastille, are all consistent with the 2030 development goals. More specifically, I've spoken to Goal 4 and Goal 14. Oh, I should say, sorry, that the Eastern Caribbean Regional Ocean Policy was established in 2013, which preceded the 2030 development goals. So under the crop, we will also be aligning the e-crop with the 2030 goals. Yeah, thank you. Obrigado. That's the only word I know.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you very much for the presentation, Susanna. We are very happy to have you here, coming from St. Lucia and representing the member states of the OECS. This is quite exciting for us, and as Susanna presented, Think Blue, powered by Virtual Educa, is grounded not only in science, in economics, and in the overall development agenda, but more specifically on a very concrete project benefiting countries across the Caribbean and really has concrete outputs coming out of this for learning purposes. So we're very excited to continue this collaboration and moving forward with this. Briefly, before I introduce our next speaker, I want to also thank Madam Chair of Virtual Educa Foundation, Mrs. Marisol Espinosa. I apologize that I didn't say hello earlier, but I thank you for being here in our session. We really appreciate it, and for welcoming us here as well with Secretary General Jose Maria Anton. This is a wonderful opportunity for all of us. So welcome to our session on the blue economy. Okay, so continuing on, very briefly though, I want to make some parallels as well. The Caribbean Regional Oceanscape Project, and I know we have some colleagues here from South Africa as well. The crop, it's also building not only national but regional marine spatial plan as well. And other regions are developing such plans as well, including our colleagues from South Africa, together with other countries. This is very exciting. And in terms of, for example, parallels with, say, Australia, the OECS has developed other products, such as a marine pollution report, understanding the importance of curbing marine pollution and managing solid waste to a great extent. And in the report, we make some parallels, for example, with the policies and the practices in Australia and in other regions. So the OECS has been very supportive and very active in developing the understanding of the blue economy and grounding this in analytical pieces. So really, we appreciate that effort. Okay, so moving on, regional perspectives. I want to now introduce our representative from the Indian Ocean Rim Association, whom represents quite a few countries of the region, including Mauritius. He's actually joining us directly from Mauritius, which is quite a long flight. So thank you for being here with us today, Professor V. N. Attri. You can introduce yourself, and I'll switch the presentation for yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm grateful to the Governor of Bahia, the Secretary of Education, the Secretary General of Virtual Education, and all the delegates who are attending this important event. And basically, in my presentation, I'm prepared the role of higher education in transition into the blue economy, a case study of Indian Ocean region. But listening Dr. Pawan and the other speakers who will be talking about the academic part, and we know that this blue economy is important, and basically I'm just starting with the statement that blue economy is essentially an innovative economy. And starting in 2010, with the publication of the book by Gunter Pali, that is 100 innovations in 10 years, 100 million jobs, blue economy basically aims at creating decent jobs using local input, depending on the ocean resources, and taking into account the interest of the small island developing states. And the other thing which I just want to make, that is blue economy is inclusive of what we call green economy, ocean economy, marine economy, and what is the difference between the ocean economy and the blue economy? That is basically when we add the element of sustainability and the environment, that becomes the blue economy. So all this part basically I'm trying to skip, and this is basically the Indian Ocean Rim Association. Let me come to the Indian Ocean Rim Association, because what is sustainable development, and what is the relationship of this sustainable development with the sustainable development goal? What are the different factors which are involved in the sustainable development? That is a harmonizing of the economic growth, social inclusion, environmental protection, and the issue of the climate change. So, and all the part of the definitional part of the blue economy. So that is basically, I'm just skipping the history of the blue economy, but I directly come to the introduction of IORA. So, in fact, IORA is an organization of 21 member states spreading over 3 continents, that is starting from Australia, then Indonesia, Malaysia, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Iran, India. Then in Africa, it is Mauritius, South Africa, Tanzania, Kenya, Mozambique, Madagascar, Comoros, UAE, Somalia, Yemen, Oman. So these are the 21 member states of Indian Ocean Rim Association, and there are 7 dialogue partners: US, UK, Japan, France, Germany, Egypt. So basically, that is the idea, and the Indian Ocean Rim Association was established on 7th March 1997 when 14 member states assembled in Mauritius and decided to go for Indian Ocean Rim Association for Regional Cooperation. So that was the original name. The focus of the association was to promote regional economic cooperation in the Indian Ocean region, promoting balanced growth, sustainable development, eradicating poverty, and the key figure behind the formation of the Indian Ocean Rim Association is late former President Nelson Mandela, who basically made a statement during the visit to New Delhi in 1995. Let us, the member states of the Indian Ocean, unite together for bringing peace and prosperity in the Indian Ocean region. So essentially, the agenda of the Indian Ocean region is development-oriented. Indian Ocean is the 3rd largest ocean in the world, and geostrategically it is very important. It is the lifeline for the energy, and the security of energy is very important. So there are 2 important phases in the life of the Indian Ocean region. It was established in 1997. Since 1997 to 2010, there was the annual meetings of the Indian Ocean Rim Association, and the chairman of the Indian Ocean Association is voluntary. But the real dynamic character of the Indian Ocean Rim Association was revealed when India took chair in 2011, and in that year 6 priority areas were established. Those were maritime safety and security, disasters risk management, fisheries management, academic science technology, tourism and cultural exchange. Then in October 2013, when Australia became the chair, the 2 more cross-cutting issues, that is the women economic empowerment, and in October 2014, the blue economy were added. In the Perth Declaration, it was accepted by all the IORA countries that the future course of development will be centered around the development of blue economy in all the member states of IORA. Now, let me just try to give some of the snapshot of IORA. IORA basically represents more than 9% of the world GDP, more than 2.3 billion population. The IORA's exports as a percentage of world export is more than 10%. IORA's imports as a percentage of world imports is more than 11%. IORA's FDI as a percentage of world FDI is around, 10%. And IORA's exclusive economic zone as a percentage of total exclusive economic zone of the world ranges around 22% to 25%. So that is basically is the importance of the IORA. And then directly coming on the issues of the blue economy. The blue economy in the Indian Ocean region, as I mentioned, started during the 14th IORA ministerial meeting in Perth, Australia on October 9, 2014. And there are the following, priority areas of IORA: and that is fisheries and aquaculture, renewable ocean energy, seaport and shipping, offshore hydrocarbons and seabed minerals, marine biotechnology, research and development, tourism, and ocean knowledge cluster and SIDS and LDCs program. So then there have been a lot of activities. That is the first IORA Ministerial Blue Economy Conference, which was there in 2nd and 3rd September 2015 in Mauritius, which focused on fisheries and aquaculture, renewable energy, seaport and fishing, offshore hydrocarbons and seabed minerals. And this was basically based on the previous IORA Blue Core Group meetings, which were held in 2015 in Durban in South Africa. Then the second core group meeting on blue economy was held in China, which is one of the dialogue partner of IORA. The third core group meeting of the blue economy was held in Mauritius, and the outcome of these meetings were fed into the first ministerial blue economy conference, which was there in Mauritius in September 2 and 3rd, 2015. And these are some of the major outcomes of the Mauritius Declaration. So basically, in these declaration, there is a clear-cut commitment of IORA to the blue economy. IORA is strongly committed to the blue economy as revealed by the Mauritian Declaration, September 2015. And then you see, in the first ministerial, some of the highlights were, for example, need for proper management of marine resources and enhancing capacity building in developing SIDS and LDCs, because IORA is a combination of advanced economies like Australia and Singapore, emerging economies like India, Malaysia, South Africa, and the small and island states like Seychelles, Mauritius, and LDCs like you say Cameroon, Madagascar, Mozambique, Tanzania, etc., and then Somalia and Yemen. So we have a great challenge, and that basically is reflected in the Mauritian Declaration on the blue economy. The other important highlight was to promote collaboration and cooperation for balanced economic development in the region, and this has to be achieved by cooperating with the member states as well as the dialogue partner. This basically emphasizing the role of the dialogue partner means accepting that blue economy is a intergovernmental and global issue. And then it also fits into, well, into the integration of sustainable development as was envisaged in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil on 20 to 22nd June 2012. So then basically we also committed to the Perth principles for peaceful, productive use of Indian Ocean and its resources, which was passed by the COM, that is the Committee of Foreign Ministers, that is the highest body, on 1st November 2013. Then we are also committed to the Sustainable Goal 14, that is the life below the sea. And we are also committed that the innovativeness and the sustainable character of the blue economy has to be maintained. And the other thing which is very important in the Mauritian Declaration is the adoption of the public-private partnership model. And we are also committed to the regional regulatory framework with regard to the development of the blue economy. Then in 2017, there is, these are some of the details of the declarations. And then this is the Jakarta Declaration, which was there in May 2017. And here, prior to this declaration, there was first Leaders Summit during the chairmanship of Indonesia in March 2017 after 20 years of IORA existence. So this is a major development. All the leaders, the foreign ministers, and there were president and prime minister of some of the countries, which basically resolved that we are committed to the peaceful use of the ocean resources. We are committed to the peace in the Indian Ocean region. We are committed to the connectivity. We are committed to the maritime safety and security to be developed in a collaborative and cooperative mode. And then the other major achievement during the chairmanship of Indonesia was IORA developed the action plan, that is the 2017 and 2021. There is the short-term issues and the long-term issues in which we try to make the roadmap in achieving the sustainable development goal, in the implementation of the blue economy, in revitalizing the trade and investment flows, and fisheries and management. And then we also committed the integration of the SMEs with the blue economy, even the trade sector, maritime connectivity in IORA, research and development in friendly business environment, human and natural challenges, also the issue of illegal, unreported and unregulated fishing, conserving the biodiversity in the Indian Ocean region, sharing information, experiences, expertise, and best practices, and the technology transfer in blue economy among the member states as well as in the dialogue partners, and basically to promote transfer of technology. So these are basically, and also focusing on developing a master plan on food security, climate change, poverty alleviation, etc. So these are some of the important things which emerges from the declaration. Then these are basically some of the major events. That is the list of the events on the blue economy which has been there. And these are the 12 events. Then there is a section on the performance of the member states on blue economy. I'm just skipping. Mauritius, Seychelles, Bangladesh, Thailand, India, they are all launching. Kenya, South Africa, Australia, they are all launching the blue economy. And then basically in certain areas regarding the marine spatial planning or coastal marine spatial planning, Australia was one of the first country in the world to introduce the ocean policy, national ocean policy. The other member states of the Indian Ocean is also following that. And then basically the implementation of the blue economy and the role for the education basically in transitioning the blue economy into action. So as basically discussed yesterday and today and in the future course of action, what we feel in IORA that the blue economy is an initiative in which all the regions across the world should come together. That is basically is the regional perspective. And I'm happy that I'm sharing the event with the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, which are much ahead in implementing the blue economy because they have a consensus, but in IORA, the things are different. But now what we are focusing, I had discussion with the Center for Blue Economy, Professor Colgan, and then was in touch with the World Bank. And basically, IORA in principle is committed to Think Blue Economy Consortium. And we are looking forward to work with virtual education, the World Bank, the UNESCO, the other international organizations. We are in the process of having MOU. IORA has a MOU with the FAO. We are also having MOU with the African Union. Current chair of IORA is South Africa. South Africa is committed to the role of academics and education. India is also taking lead in the academic science and technology. There is a program of university mobility program. So in that context, as a chair in Indian Ocean Studies, I am just trying to implement the blue economy. As I mentioned in the beginning, that blue economy by definition is an innovative economy. And here, some of the important issues basically which are important, that is the future agenda of IORA, setting up working group on blue economy, identifying pathways for making blue economy action-oriented, linking of blue economy with the UN Sustainable Development Goal, integrating exponential technological growth with blue economy and SDG, collaborating with the World Bank and other UN agencies to link higher education in transitioning to blue economy, creating capacity building in blue economy through training program. And as I discussed with the Secretary General of the Virtual Education, we are looking forward for positive relationship with the virtual education, because you are already in touch with the South Africa, and the outcome of this meeting I will be reporting to the incoming CSO meeting, which is responsible for the day-to-day activities of IORA. We have other, you say, core group, that is basically there is a working group on trade and investment. There is Indian Ocean Rim Academic Group. There is Indian Ocean Rim Business Forum. So and we are also setting up new working groups in blue economy, in tourism, in maritime safety and security. So the IORA is moving towards action, and that is why I am here in collaborating with all these institutions in promoting ocean education. To me, the frontiers of higher GDP growth or the frontier of prosperity in the globe is linked with the growth of ocean education-based knowledge. So that is what I am here, and thank you very much. If there are any queries, I'm happy to answer your question. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Attri. This is wonderful. This session, can everybody hear me? This session, really, we wanted to develop it so that it embodies what Virtual Educa and the government of Bahia wanted to establish to begin with. The first global in nature education forum that really brings colleagues from across regions to discuss the importance of education for many aspects of our lives and lifelong learning, but here more specifically for the blue economy and our prosperous future. Also in support of the Sustainable Development Goals, Goal 4 on education, 14 on oceans, and other ones as well on climate change, on partnerships. It's a very important SDG that we don't discuss as much, SDG 17 on partnerships. And in that regard, we have, for example, both the OECS and, as Professor Attri mentioned, work very closely with UN agencies such as FAO as well as UNESCO. I know UNESCO is present at the forum this week. I'm not sure if they're in this room as well, but to give you an example, UNESCO has a very solid framework on marine spatial planning, and they develop a lot of technical knowledge on this regard. And here at the OECS has benefited for this for the crop, and now we'll continue developing this into digestible pieces of knowledge through Think Blue. And we continue the discussions with this international and institutional and corporate partners, as well as Virtual Educa Foundation, to ensure this is a successful initiative and voyage for all of us. Okay, so to continue, now we have academic perspectives. We learn from the governments and the regional representatives of the governments on why is it important for their sustainable future. Now we can learn about from academia more specifically, what we can do to teach our young, the youth, as well as the different lifelong learning stages, how to develop and learn from the blue economy. So I will introduce, first of all, according to our agenda, Dr. Charles Colgan. He will join us remotely, and I'll set up that in a second. Dr. Charles Colgan is the Research Director for the Center for the Blue Economy, Middlebury Institute of International Studies at Monterrey. Dr. Colgan has collaborated now for a while with the World Bank as well to develop analytical pieces, and really is a strong advocate as well of the blue economy and teaching and education in this aspect. So I will let Dr. Colgan take over, and I'll set him up on the screen for all of us to enjoy his presentation. Thank you.
Let me get my screen share up here. So I'm going to just spend a couple of minutes on the question of what should be the curriculum of the blue economy. What do we need to learn, and what do we need to teach people how to do in order to get to the sustainable blue economy that Pawan talked about? I want to make two quick points first. The first is that creating the blue economy is going to be hard. And we're only at the very beginning of the process of learning how to do it. If it were easy, and if we knew all the answers already, we'd already be doing it, and we wouldn't be having this same conversation. This is a very difficult subject, and a lot of effort is going to have to go into learning how to do it, as well as teaching how to do it. The second point I want to make is that the challenge in education here is both long-term and immediate. For many of the young people who will hopefully become enrolled in various kinds of educational programs at the secondary and post-secondary level, maybe even earlier into the younger grades, they will have, I think, relatively little barrier to learning about the idea of the blue economy, and it will seem obvious to them. Moreover, as they grow up and enter the workforce, the stock of experience from which the blue economy is going to be shaped will already be there for them. In a way, the real challenge lies with today's workforce, the people who are just entering the workforce and the people who are already operating in the various institutions and organizations shaping the blue economy. We are the ones who are going to have to make the change, to make the transition from the old idea of the ocean economy to the new idea of the sustainable blue economy. So let me suggest 5 elements that are going to be critical to understanding how the blue economy is going to work and how success can be achieved. The first is not always the most obvious one to talk about. We usually talk about environmental issues, but I'm going to put customers at the top of the list, people who are going to be who's going to buy from the blue economy. And can we get sustainability to be valued in the marketplace? And can we meet the demands of our most demanding customer, as Michael Porter has argued we should do in a globally competitive market? Understanding the needs of our customers the people who are buying from us, is a critical first part that we often overlook in thinking about the ocean economy. The second part is capital. And there are 4 parts of capital that we have to simultaneously invest in. We have to invest in physical capital, new wharves, piers, schools, and so on. We have to invest in financial capital. Someone needs to make money at some point. We have to invest in human capital. We have to make sure the workforce is adequately recompensed for its work. And finally, we have to sustain the natural capital. So there are 4 capital accounts that we have to keep track of. The third element is management, which is basically how do we organize and manage our missions and organizations for simultaneously for economic improvement and environmental protection. This is a delicate balance act, and it's something that has to be done every single day by thousands of people around the world, all of whom will ultimately be struggling with the question of what do we say no to? What do we decide we can't do in order to be sustainable or can't do in order to be economically viable? The fourth element is measurement. If we don't know where we are, how will we know if we are moving towards or away from a sustainable blue economy? Measurement and accountability is the fourth component. And the final component is innovation. What new technologies will be needed? Equally important, how will those technologies be diffused around the world? In many places, technology tends to be innovated in a relatively small number of places and diffused around the world. How can we make sure that the innovation that's needed is taking place? But equally, how can we ensure that that innovation is distributed efficiently and fairly around the world? So those 5 elements, customers, capital, management, measurement, and innovation, become the foundation from which a curriculum of creating the blue economy can be created. This is admittedly a curriculum for more advanced study than you would find in, say, kindergarten and the lower grades, but that is where you will begin to pick up the understanding of the relationship between people and the ocean that will ultimately let you address these issues. The way we do this is through a global network for the global ocean, a global education network for the global ocean, with participation by the public sector, the private sector, non-governmental organizations, and educational institutions, who will make up both the students and the teachers in this global network for the global ocean. A former president of my old university once described the job of educators as simple. We learn new things and we share what we learn with others. It's a simple job description. In the blue economy, we are all learning how to do the blue economy, so we are all both learners and educators. We are learning how to do it. We're going to have to teach other people. Those who are teachers about the blue economy are also going to have to continuously be learning. The challenges for the education institutions, the public, the private, and the non-governmental organizations, all of whom will form both the teaching body and the learning body, is to create this global network that begins to answer the questions that are necessary to deal with the complexities and difficulties of the global blue economy. So it's quite a challenge. It's quite a challenge institutionally to create the networks and organizations to do this task. It's also quite complex in terms of the subject matters and the way in which we'll have to integrate knowledge from a whole variety of disciplines into a new set of lessons and practices. So that's a very quick overview of the elements of the curriculum that I think will be necessary for the blue economy. More about that later if you want to discuss it, and we've got more information from our center if you're interested in following up on that. So I'll stop there and turn it back to Jorge.
Hello? Yes. All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Colgan. Really appreciate your intervention. Very interesting, very relevant. Indeed, we must continue understanding not only the role of the blue economy in the day-to-day basis in our day-to-day operations, but thinking about how we prepare our young and ourselves really for this very real world that we're starting to experience across regions. So to continue, the academic perspective and specifically on teaching, learning, education linked to the blue economy and to think blue, I'd like to introduce Dr. John Verdon. He's the Director of Ocean and Coastal Policy Program at the Nicholas Institute for Environmental Policy Solutions at Duke University. Dr. Verdon, you have the floor.
Great. Well, thank you, Jorge, and good afternoon, everyone. I hope you can hear me okay. I'd like to, first off, just to begin to thank again the government of Bahia and also Virtual Educa for the opportunity to participate in this really exciting event. And I'm so sorry that I can't be there with you, but I wanted just to follow up quickly on what some of my colleagues have talked about, particularly, colleagues have talked about what this concept of the blue economy is as it relates to the ways that people use the oceans and how the oceans are changing and why it's so important in so many different places. And Dr. Colgan just mentioned, okay, here's how we might teach about it. Here's a curriculum. And so I just wanted to give you all, in following that very briefly, just one example of how we are starting to talk about this with students at Duke and starting to teach students about the ways that the ocean is changing, the ways that people use the ocean, how those are changing, and this whole concept. And we started by asking ourselves, this is a colleague of mine, Professor Steve Rohde, and I started asking ourselves, how can we get more young students at the university interested in the ocean, in the ways that people are using it, in all of these things that we've been talking about here today? And one of the things that we thought about really quickly that really struck us was what one of our colleagues at Smithsonian, Dr. Nancy Knowlton, had said, that we just couldn't stand in front of the students and teach more doom and gloom about how all the ocean environment is changing, all of the things that we depend on are changing in adverse ways, and it's all really a depressing picture. And as Dr. Knowlton mentioned, she could just see students start to slump down in their chairs as she delivered all of this information. And that's not to say that we didn't want to communicate the way what's happening, the challenges that we're all facing as a society in the ocean space. But we didn't want to just beat students down with this sense of hopelessness about it. And so, as Dr. Knowlton mentioned, she started finding these bright spots, as she called them, around the world where she could say, look, we have knowledge now that we've shown that we can actually reverse some of the degradation of the ocean environment. We can see what a blue economy, so to speak, might look like in this given place. And let's show how this could be done. And so with that in mind, we thought maybe we'll flip the question a little bit and say not so much, okay, let's teach about all these things that are happening in the ocean space and include how all of the ocean ecosystems are changing, overfishing, pollution, what have you. But let's flip the question a little bit and see if we could say, look, if we think about some of the major challenges facing humanity today and the major development challenges facing the world, what are some of the ways that a healthier ocean and this concept of the blue economy could actually help solve some of these other problems? And so with that in mind, we thought, let's take the Sustainable Development Goals as our problem set and put the goal on the oceans aside. Let's see what role the oceans could play in solving some of these other problems if our use of the oceans was better managed, if some of these concepts of the blue economy were put into practice. What would the difference make for some of these other problems? And so that's, I'm just going to put up a couple slides here really quickly just to show you, and this will come up here. Sorry, bear with me just a moment as I, so just to show you the way we were thinking about this, there's an analysis. This is a network analysis done by some colleagues at the University of British Columbia and University of Washington in the Nereus program, where they took all 17 of the Sustainable Development Goals and just started looking at, well, if we met the ocean goal, if we had healthy oceans and we made progress towards this concept of a blue economy, what would the benefits be for solving some of these other big problems, like ending poverty, ending hunger, fighting climate change? And so that's where we, somewhat arbitrarily, we decided, let's pick a few of these and let's structure a course around a few big problems and show how the oceans might help solve some of these problems. And so we just picked 4. We picked poverty, hunger, access to clean energy, and climate change. And we just broke our course up into modules and started talking with the undergraduate students at Duke about, look, what are the bright spots in the oceans or the ocean solutions around the world that are actually helping contribute to these other objectives, to fighting poverty or to ending hunger? And then what would the policies need be that we need to introduce as societies to have more of this, to get farther, to make more progress? And at the end, how much of a difference would it make towards solving these big global problems? And we ended up at the end of the day with an ocean report card, so to speak, for the students, and said, okay, here are a number of solutions for ending poverty, for example. We know that small-scale fisheries, what you might think of as artisanal fishing in a canoe and with a small outboard engine. In fact, these fisheries catch about half the seafood from the ocean and from inland areas. And these fisheries provide over 90% of the employment in fishing worldwide. They are literally the ocean's labor force, providing more jobs and income than almost any other livelihood connected to the ocean. If these fisheries could perform better, if they could be more productive, provide more jobs, how much progress would that give us towards poverty reduction, particularly in low-income tropical countries bordering the coast or in island countries? And then what policy changes would we need to get there? Well, maybe in many of these countries, the voices of fishing communities are not heard in government and decision-making. Maybe in many of these countries, fishers organize, but they lose out in competition to large industrial vessels. Maybe if we have policies that better recognize the rights of these fishers to organize and to impact decision-making, we could get better outcomes from these fisheries. Where has that happened? And these were the sort of the types of conversations that we were having throughout the course. And then at the end of the day, we were talking about this step by step through the problem, looking at renewable ocean energy. The new research is showing us that wind energy offshore, there's wave energy, current, tidal energy, all these sources of energy could power significant portions of the economy in the right context if they were become more economically feasible. What policies might we need in a given place to get there? And we sort of tried to problem solve on these with the students. Basically, what policies would you change so that the ocean could help solve some of these big problems that we're all facing? And at the end of the day, I think we got really good feedback from the students, many of whom these were not marine biology majors. These were not ocean policy majors. These were, say, engineering students who had never thought about using some of the skills they were developing in the ocean space, but suddenly were saying, you know, we are working on renewable energy technology. Let's see if we can have wave-powered buoys in the ocean, and where we could construct cell phone networks on the ocean that small-scale fishers could use to have cell phone coverage at sea and report fishing violations and help manage their fisheries. We started having those conversations with engineering students, with computer science students, with economics majors, with just a whole range of disciplines around what role could the ocean play in helping solve some of these global problems, and what policies would we need to get there with this concept of the blue economy. And so I think it was an experiment, and as Dr. Colgan mentioned, you know, We're just starting to figure out how to teach about this idea, this concept of the blue economy and the ways in which uses of the ocean are changing. But this was one way that we've tried here at Duke, and I think we've been pretty pleased with it as Professor Rodi and I sort of sat back and have looked at the results now and have talked with some other faculty. And I think we're going to plan to do it again, and hopefully, again, more and more we can start to get more and more young people interested in the ocean space, in the ways in which our economy and our society interact with the ocean and how that's changing in the future radically, according to some projections. So that's just to give you one example of how we're starting to try to teach some of our undergraduate students about the ocean, about the blue economy concept, even if they choose completely different majors. We're hoping that they incorporate the oceans more and more into their thinking and their work and their studies in other topics and other disciplines. So thank you all very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Dr. Verdin. This has been hopefully a lively discussion for a lot of us here. For me, it certainly has been. And I want to briefly restate what Pawan opened with, right? These economic figures based on factual science and research that future jobs are likely to come from the ocean industries. And this is a global phenomenon. This is a new reality that we are living, and it's only going to continue growing. There's a real opportunity here. Now, I want to do a quick exercise for everybody. I want everybody's attention. Put down your phones, put down your computers, and let's have an honest, frank, open discussion. And I want to ask you this, right? Based on what we learned here, based on clear governmental interest and action and pledging, a commitment, as well as based on World Bank support and Think Blue and everything that we've seen here today and all the figures, as well as academia, I want to ask you, are we educating our young people for this new reality? Is this something we're doing? Are we engaged in this? Let's talk frankly, everybody. Put down your phones, as I mentioned, and let's talk about this. Anybody has any insight on this? Are we educating our young for this reality of an ocean economy, a blue economy? Floor is open. Don't be shy. I see a hand over here from our colleagues from Australia. Please introduce yourself and give us some insights.
Okay now? Yeah. Nadav Shashar, over from Australia and from Israel, university professor, and I'll give you numbers. Our university is taking out about 100 biology, environmental students, bachelors finishing every year. We take back about 2 or 3 faculties. We have about 75% of our students actually doing the typical job of what you do with, you have a bachelor's in marine sciences, going and working in something else. They do not go back to the job. We are offline. We are not providing them right now in the current way education that can work on. In fact, one of the reasons why I'm here is to get ideas and to see how we can actually do job training. But when you look at it, when we teach in high schools, I think the numbers are worse than that. And if we look at what's going on in Duke, I think you have the similar numbers as well. Not if you look at number of faculties you get and number of students you deliver outside, the ratio is not the best. Yes, we make great scientists, but we don't really get good. I don't think we actually are now delivering job-related training.
Excellent. Thank you for your feedback. Anybody else, please feel free to discuss the question that I posed. Everybody, it's a simple question. It's a very relevant question. And I see some hands over here. This is quite exciting. I actually saw the lady down there, and then we'll come back to you. Yes? Thank you. Please introduce yourself and give us your insights. Thank you.
Thank you. So my name is Cristiane Buoni. I work at the WFP Center of Excellence in Brazil. So I don't know if you know, WFP is one of the largest humanitarian organizations within the UN. We are more connected to the development side and working a lot of school feeding programs, supporting countries to develop these national policies and programs, school feeding. So a lot of the discussions of education, what you're doing in the Blue Ocean is very interesting. I know that one of the things that we did when we tried to deal with food and nutrition security in schools and all this education, how they could know better about the food, is also that the reality was very far from what they are seeing. So I think that in these discussions is some sort of the same challenge, is that a lot of what we are discussing here is far away from the reality of many children. And especially, for example, if you look at the African continent and the Asian, they have a very different relations from what we are talking here. And I think this learning is also the solution for that. So I think also the school is the bridge to bring this knowledge to the kids. So that was something that we found out in the food and nutrition education world, that is, of course, it's like anti-steps. It's small, but it's also a lot of learning that will bring this knowledge to their reality. And also something that they can understand what this blue economy can mean to their communities. So I think bringing closer these discussions to the communities, to the small groups, and making them discuss and contextualize it, shape it to their national context, to their national culture, is something that normally is bringing new ideas to the African continent, for example, especially those communities. If you look at Madagascar and all these islands, Mozambique, how they interact with these is sometimes very predatory, is not for the local communities, they don't know what is there for them. So I think dissemination of this knowledge, of these discussions at the local level will help a lot. And the other thing is also we're here talking a lot about a forum of South-South cooperation. And this was also a very useful tool serving development in terms of fighting hunger and poverty. And I think also disseminate all these efficient tools that you are discussing here, that professors also mentions, to all these other countries in a dialogue of South-South cooperation, teaching them, learning, but also building new solutions together, I think can be another dissemination of